These are union scale, highly skilled journeyman level positions. Electrical workers, machinists, millwrights, pipe fitters, truck drivers, steel workers, professional engineers, boiler technicians, water treatment technicians, mechanical steam turbo generator operators, clerical as well as administrative staff. Real jobs, real people, real families. A nation's economic status and standard of living is determined by the natural resources of that nation, as well as its ability to develop them. These would have been plants that would have supplied cheap wholesale power to the Western Regional Power Administration grid and to the Southwest. We could have sold this power to other states to bring revenue in as well as jobs into the state. Harry Reid and his cronies opted to transition our state into a gaming-based economy, and now we see the results of that. We see the consequences every day, and it affects all of us. Outside companies were wanting to come into the state and invest billions of dollars. These were once all viable businesses that used to pay taxes into our local economy that funded local municipalities, fire departments, school districts. The coal that comes out of Utah is the cleanest burning coal on Earth. It has an extremely low sulfur content. It's a very high-grade bituminous coal. Here is nothing, no thanks to Harry Reid. Harry Reid used his position of influence in the United States Senate to discourage the investment, development, and construction of a 750 megawatt clean coal-fired power plant near the town of Mesquite, Nevada. The 2-quap power plant that was supposed to be completed this year in Mesquite, in Lincoln County, outside of Mesquite, Nevada, would have been about 750 megawatts. Cogentrix, North Carolina-based Cogentrix, Sith Global of New York wanted to construct this plant, and it would have only used, they got permits from the state engineer. They got the water rights. They had purchased the water rights from the state engineer. It would have used from 2,000 to 7,000 acre feet a year, which is hardly anything as far as water. To give you a reference, the Mojave generating station, which was built in 1971, was emitting approximately 36,000 tons of nitrous oxide every year and about 18,000 tons of sulfur dioxide. And that was a 1,582 megawatt plant. The 2-quap power plant in Mesquite would have only emitted 1,600 tons of nitrous oxide and 1,600 tons of sulfur dioxide every year, which is about 20% proportionally to the Mojave generating station, because it's only about half the size at 750 megawatts. It would have been about 1,000 construction jobs, and it would have employed about 100 to 130 people on a full-time basis. Initially, Harry Reid supported the project, and then he arbitrarily changed his position and stated his opposition publicly in a letter he wrote to the City Council of St. George, Utah. And as a result, it discouraged many of the investors from getting the capital and the loans in order to begin construction. This power generating plant would have brought jobs to this community and supplied cheap wholesale power to the Southwest. This is Copper Country, an area rich in history of Greek immigrants, as well as others who came in to work these mines, copper mills, and smelters. White Pine County enjoyed prosperity during the better part of the past century because of its mineral wealth, up until about the late 80s and early 90s. In the 1980s, the Japanese flooded the world market with cheap copper, and it undermined much of our copper industry in this country. The EPA was also continually haranguing Kennecott with fines for multiple violations as well as multiple lawsuits. It became no longer profitable for Kennecott to operate here, so they were forced to close down their Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada operations and consolidate everything into Magna, Utah. I hear people say that it was their own fault because they didn't modernize. The steel companies and the copper companies didn't modernize and upgrade their equipment. But the fact is they did make multiple efforts to comply with the EPA regulations. Chimney number 4 was built as an emission control measure by Kennecott to comply in a good faith effort with a lot of the guidelines the EPA was beginning to establish and to address a lot of their concerns. As the smoke rises in the chimney, it builds pressure and heat, and when it finally exits the smokestack, it gains velocity and it dissipates, becoming less dense and releasing less of a concentration of pollutants into the atmosphere. Kennecott spent millions of dollars to build that chimney. They were the largest employer in White Pine County, and when they left, the population decreased from approximately 20,000 to less than 10,000 people today. Kennecott was very good to that area. McGill was a company town. The company paid for the construction of the LDS chapel, the Catholic church, and the recreation hall. Anytime a rancher would come in and file a claim against the company for damages to his crops, his alfalfa, from acid rain, they would usually write him a check, no questions asked, so he could buy hay to feed his livestock. They relocated the entire town of Ruth because of some sinkholes that were caused by one of the mines that were endangering some homes. 2007, NV Energy purchased water rights, went through the very expensive permitting process through the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection to drill off-site wells, build a pipeline, railway spurs, roads, a substation with an electrical switchyard to begin construction on the Ely Energy Center.
This is the Steptoe Valley behind me here in White Pine County, about 7 miles outside of Ely, and this is one of the sites where one of the power plants was supposed to be built.
LS Power from New Jersey wanted to come in and build the White Pine Electric Station. It would have been a modern pulverized clean coal burning generating plant, 1,600 megawatts. Both of these plants were supposed to replace the ones being decommissioned down in Clark County, Reid Gardner in Moapa Valley, and the Mojave Generating Station in Laughlin. Both of these projects would have brought about 1,800 jobs, construction jobs, into the local area, building the plants for several years. Electrical workers, steel workers, pipe fitters, professional engineers, highway crews. These jobs support other jobs in the economy. Outside companies were wanting to come into the state and invest billions of dollars. Again, as recent as 3 to 4 years ago, Harry Reid initially threw his support behind these projects. They were endorsed by the Nevada State AFL-CIO in Carson City as well. And then he stated his public opposition to them, as well as bringing all these outside groups in to protest this at the public forum they had, at the public hearing they had at the Bristlecone Convention Center in Ely. Over half of the 300 people in attendance at the public hearing at the Bristlecone Convention Center in Ely were brought in from outside of the state, environmental groups, most of them from Utah, and most of them were bussed in. Among those who opposed it were the Sierra Club, a leader from a nearby Goshute Indian tribal government, and the acting superintendent of the Great Basin National Park citing environmental impact studies. They had children and teenagers there from Utah with homemade signs